Welcome to the History Hub channel. Today we are looking into the Indian historiography section. We are now focusing on the modern Indian historiography. So last slide we looked into the medieval Indian historiography, which covered Mughal historiography and Muslim historiography. Now we are going to look into the modern Indian historiography, which is a very interesting period in the Indian subcontinent. And the time period of this modern Indian historiography, where a lot of material was written in India, was from time 1757 to 1947. So with the coming of the Europeans, basically the French, the English, there was a lot of changes in the Indian scene. So Indian historiography changed. So we had there were a lot of historians who wrote in different ways. They looked into different ways of writing about the Indian subcontinent. So the history written during this period was not very objective. It was biased. For example, people like James Mill were more focused on um, glorifying the British laws and rules, and they did not look into the completely objectively. They did not look into the Indian society. Then there were some like William Jones, who were very sympathetic to Indian conditions, who glorified the Indian civilization. Then there were evangelists. Evangelists were more focused with spread of Christianity, and so whatever they wrote with the intention of glorifying the British rule and also glorifying Christianity. So whatever they wrote would the society of India was weak, and that's why the spread of Christianity will do the society good. So that was the way the evangelist saw the country and wrote also about the country. Then there were scholars who objectively wrote about the country, who studied Indian civilization, who studied Sanskrit, who who translated the inscriptions, who glanced at primary sources and wrote about Indian subcontinent in an objective way without any bias. Then that is what I meant by objectivity. Then there were Indian historians as well, which was a reaction against evangelist, which was a reaction against James Mill. So Indian historians were nationalist. So they glorified the Indian subcontinent and India's culture and traditions. They glorified ancient India. So again, they were not very objective because there was a certain amount of bias in their writing. So these were the type of people and type of historians and type of works that were written during the modern period, which can be said to last from 1757 to 1947. So let us look into a little more deeper into all these historians. So James Mill was one of the first type of historiographer who was called as a utilitarian. Utilitarian means one who gives more focus on laws, who believes that it is law and justice and government is more important. So James Mill was focused on law. So he wrote the book History of British India, and he said that he has written about the Hindu period, the Muslim period, that is the ancient and medieval periods, and he tries to say that it was not a very progressive period. So the British period was the more progressive period. That is the way he has conveyed his philosophy or has conveyed his work. So he did not praise the past regimes that were there in the country. So he did not talk about the ancient medieval periods and neither the contributions of various people in the society. He tried to only glorify the British rule. But one thing that can be said to about him is he wrote a lot about policies and it was detailed. And James Mill had never even come to the country, India. So whatever he did not even know the language, and neither did he come to the country. He did not read about other works, or even if he had read about other scholars, he only took those sources where he felt that British could be glorified. So, this was the type of historiography written by James Mill. Then there were evangelists, and basically, as I mentioned before, evangelists were like they were the missionaries and who praised the British rule, who said Christianity was the one which is going to change the society and all. So those works were also very important during the modern period of the country. Then you had administrators. So there were administrators like this Elphinstone. Then there was Macaulay. Then there were people like Morland. So, and there were many others who, Mark Wilkes, James Todd, William Hunter. So these people, as part of their work, they wrote about the country, and also they had their own way of looking into things. So, let's take a few examples. So, Macaulay, he was actually a part of the he was the secretary of the board of control. So he wrote the book, History of England, and he was the one who was very much convinced of the superiority of Western education. So he was the one who introduced English, codified the laws, and his contribution to the Indian administration was with respect to the English introduction and even the criminal law codification. But whatever books he wrote, be it the history of England, that was more biased towards the Western people. So it was very widely read by the English by England, and his essays were very good, very skillful. It was meant to amuse, interest people, and he succeeded in that. But once again, it was like he was, it was like not very did not show India in a very good light. So he said the entire learning what is there in the Western libraries is much more superior to either Sanskrit or even Persian. So that was the kind of thinking Macaulay had. Then there was William Harrison Moreland, who basically wrote economic historiography. So his books on agriculture of United Provinces, or Akbar's land revenue system, or even Introduction to Economics, all of them was though written very consciously. The only problem was again it was a piece of glorification for the British rule. So when he wrote about the Mughal land revenue system, he tried to show that the Mughals were not very. He tried to paint Mughals in the darker colors, and he tried to glorify the British rule, which he felt was much more superior. So still, he wrote a new piece of try to bring in the economic aspect to history. So he was trying to say that Mughal period was worse, and the coming of British was more helpful for the economy. Then you had administrative historians like Mark Wilkes and William Hunter. Some of them even in their some of their in their writings also you can see that there is a kind of a bias. So they may have been glorifying Clive or Dalhousie or even Curzon. So they try to show the superiority of the British administrators and officers. There are some like Elphinstone who were sympathetic, who liked the country India, and who also wrote about the history of India and and he they spent a lot of time in the country. So he too, so it was not all dark. So there were some people who were sympathetic as well. He wrote the history of Hindu and Mohammedan India. Then there were the nationalist historians. So if you see, be it Macaulay or Moreland or James Mill, so all of them were quite aggressive towards the Indian rule. So after the advent of Congress, after the advent of Gandhi, and during the nationalist era, it was natural for the historians of India to actually grasp what was happening, and they started defending India, and so rose the nationalist historians. So they were defensive. They were also not objective. So they described ancient period as a very good period, and they described that whatever Clive had done or whatever other administrators were doing were not very great, and our the Indian ancient period was also very good, and they also tried to showcase that ancient Indians knew a lot of things. They tried to explain about the caste in a favorable way. And some of the books like R.C. Datta's Civilization in Ancient India, R.K. Mukherjee's Fundamental Unit of India were all during this period. So there are also Hindu and Muslim historiographers who wrote with the keeping a bias in mind. Finally, there were other Indian historiographers like Bhandarkar or Jaiswal or J.N. Sarkar or R.C. Majumdar, who also were tried to bring about a balance. Some of them, at least, tried to bring about tried to bring about a balance, try to write critical and sober history in their own way. So, if you see, the modern period is quite colorful with so many. Historians contributing their own works. There were also people like, after this Hindu and Muslim historiographers who used to write on their own society, there are also people who realized that it is very necessary to bring about Hindu Muslim unity, and so they wrote books showcasing the cultural unity also. So, people, some of the works from Dr. Tharachand, Influence of Islam on Indian Culture, was one such attempt. So you can see so that different people came with a different thought process and contributed to the modern period. So that ends the modern Indian historiography, and keep subscribing to this channel for more history related information. Thank you.